moon hung low over the burned shell of King's Landing, a bruised pearl on a night stained by lingering smoke. Though the fires had cooled, the city breathed ash, every breeze whispering through broken rafters, every alleyway lined with drifting cinders like gray snowfall. The streets, once choked with panicked screams, now thrummed with the unnerving hush of exhaustion. Carcasses of shops and homes stood hollow-eyed beneath blackened timbers, their owners vanished or silent behind shuttered doors. In the highest spire of the Red Keep, candle flames still flickered. That fragile glow offered a promise, or a warning. To the ruin below, the queen endured. Arya Stark tasted soot each time she drew breath, but it was the coppery tang of old blood that lingered on her tongue as she trudged toward the royal hill. Beneath the cloak of twilight, her boots left scarcely a sound, for she walked the practiced way of quiet hunters, the steps of a girl who had haunted catacombs, barns, and godswood groves since childhood. Every motion measured, every glance calculated. She had learned long ago that the margin between life and death was a blade's width. Tonight she meant to cross that shining edge once more. In the satchel slung across her shoulder, wrapped in linen damp with scent mask oils, lay the prize wrested from pale dawn. Jaime Lannister's face, flensed with precision, preserved in chilled broth while she worked. It had taken hours to separate skin from muscle, to stitch the edges and prepare the leathery veil, yet her hands had not trembled. They had been steady as any maester's. She told herself the tremor would come later, perhaps with daylight, when the meaning of the thing truly settled. But matters of meaning were luxuries for tomorrow. Tonight belonged to duty. A hush swept the courtyard of the Gate of the Gods. Stone lions perched upon shattered plinths, one headless, one cracked through the mane. The gold cloaks who should have guarded those lions were gone, disbanded, or dead in dragonfire. A skeleton in a scorched breastplate lay slumped at the portcullis, helm fused to ribs. Arya stepped over the corpse lightly. Her quarry lay ahead, still shielded by masonry and men sworn to protect her. It did not matter. Arya had worn other skins before. She only needed to inhabit this one convincingly enough to pass through each door left standing. A moon ago, she would never have considered using Jaime Lannister's visage. She had planned a knife in the dark, a dart of Valyrian steel to the eye, something swift. Yet as the city's downfall unraveled before her eyes, dangerous fury raining from the sky, the small folk crushed beneath crumbling towers, Arya felt the old courts of memory stir. She remembered another city, another rush of fire, another queen whispering promises of mercy while ashes fell. Revenge was not the same as justice, but sometimes they overlapped like two halves of a single coin. Cersei Lannister's death could buy peace for the thousands robbed of breath beneath her burning holdfast. Still, a knife in the dark seemed too neat an ending for a queen who had demanded spectacle from life. So Arya turned to mummery, learned long ago beneath the vaulted ceilings of the House of Black and White. She ducked beneath a breach in the outer wall, climbing the rampart. Above, the constellations wheeled like jeweled barbs. Down below, quiet shapes moved along the shadows of the palace, scattered Lannister guards, veteran sellswords wearing mismatched armor, a roving pack of drunk, rag-clad survivors rooting through debris, all oblivious to the assassin threading between them. When she reached the garden of the Red Keep, broken rosebushes scraped her calves like desperate hands. Memories fluttered at the fringe of consciousness. Sansa's letters describing courtly strolls among perfumed leaves, Ned's troubled gaze as he paced these same paths, hunting rumors of bastards. The past was a chain of ghosts. Arya blinked and let those ghosts pass through. She slid behind a toppled statue of Aegon the Conqueror, bronze wings cracked, head melted to slag. There, hidden from the rampart torches, she unfastened the satchel. A ripple of wind carried a sour medicinal note as she drew the flattened mask into the night. Jaime's face drooped, mouth sagging open in mute lament. His green eyes were gone, holes ringed by pale lashes, yet Arya's breath caught at the uncanny familiarity of that ruined visage. He had been handsome once. Now he would serve as camouflage in the final moments of the sister who had loved him beyond all measure or morality. She pressed the inner leather against her cheeks. It clung, cold as riverstone. The first time she wore a stranger's flesh, She had convulsed, heart hammering in rebellion, convinced she had forsaken what little of Arya remained. Now she inhaled slowly, felt the oil seep into her pores, and surrendered to stillness. The woman named Arya swam beneath the surface of a shallow sea. When next her eyelids rose, they did so beneath the eyelids of Jaime. She tightened a golden wig, taken from the same corpse, about her scalp, aligning part and hairline. Then she shrugged into a crimson cloak, bearing the golden lion. It smelled faintly of smoke and horses, Clegane's stable reek. With a final breath, she settled the mask to memory. Jaime's swagger, his half-smile, the lazy arc of shoulders cultivated by swordplay and arrogance both. Her right hand she kept tucked in the cloak sleeve, mimicking the lost limb, though she controlled a reverse-grip Valyrian dagger poised inside. Left-handed, Jaime had seldom needed to threaten. Presence had always been enough. Could she muster such insolence? Yes. Valor was merely performance. Guards ahead, a trio beneath a portico draped in cracked sigils. One paced, nursing a cut lip. Two leaned on spears, heads lolling with fatigue. Arya adopted Jaime's stride, casual yet charged with innate command. Torchlight spilled across her borrowed cheekbones. The pacing guard stiffened, then saluted. "My lord," he muttered, voice hoarse. She lifted her chin in silent acknowledgement. Not Jaime's cordial grin. Something harder, ghosted by trauma. That was believable. Everyone had trauma now. She did not slow, breezing between them like a gust of memory. None challenged. Inside, the corridor ceilings were spiderwebbed by hairline cracks. Tapestries drooped, half-singed. She followed the twisting ascent she had studied from stolen floor plans. Down 2 flights past the gallery of masks, up a hidden stair behind the wine cellar, through a servants' corridor lined with boarded windows. Each footfall felt calibrated, each echo pre-counted. She halted once when distant footsteps rang. A pair of Lannister men hurried past, trading hushed rumors. Reports of unsullied encampments beyond Flea Bottom, whispers that Tyrion had been seen wandering the beach like some half-mad exile. They recognized Jaime, bowed, and scurried on. Past another junction, she found the black door carved with a lion's head. Cersei's private parlor. The oak smelled of fresh polish even amid ruin. Arya pressed her ear to the grain. Within, faint murmurs. A woman's throaty cadence, low, irritable, the slap of poured wine. Footsteps pacing rugs. No other voices, the queen had dismissed her maids. Perfect. Tiny so. She pushed the door. Hinges whined. Cersei swung around, goblet raised, silk gown the color of dried blood pooling about her feet. Golden hair cascaded loose. Moonlight from the terrace window haloed her like some blighted saint. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped. Arya felt heat bloom behind her eyes at the vision of the woman who had ordered her father's death. But she steadied, weaving Jaime's subtle smirk across her lips. Cersei's goblet trembled. "I thought you were trapped below," she breathed. Voice brittle. "I heard the corridors collapsed." Arya let her shoulders sag, as though weighed by injuries. "I found another path." Cersei exhaled, relief unfurling across sharp cheekbones. She advanced, fingertips grazing hers, lapel. "I feared the worst. The world is drowning in corpses. But you always come back to me." "No." Arya felt a pulse thunder at her throat. The queen's warmth lay inches away. If she turned her disguised face, she could end Cersei here, drive steel upward beneath ribs. Yet vengeance poorly timed could squander revelations. Arya feigned weariness, easing onto a settee. Cersei sat beside, eyes devouring him with a devotion carved from childhood. Arya perceived, through thin leather cheek, the beat of Cersei's heart by the flutter of gown at her bosom. Faster than normal. Fear or desire? Both. "I dreamed you stood at the prow of a ship," Cersei murmured, brushing his false hair. "Sails behind you like wings. You promised to bring me our child." Arya's gaze flicked toward Cersei's abdomen. No swell. Lies then. Their child, like half the stories told on this hill, had burned in dragonfire or never existed at all. Arya lifted Jaime's left hand, cupping Cersei's cheek. "The child is safe," she murmured. "Safe where dragons cannot fly." Cersei's eyes glistened. "You lie as beautifully as you fight." Arya allowed a ghost of laughter. It tasted rotten. Seconds slid past like beads along a wire. She felt tingling where the mask glued to her lips, sweat loosening seams. She adjusted the cloak to hide. Then she spoke softly. "We must leave tonight. The Unsullied will breach these walls at dawn. I know a secret passage to the shore where a skiff awaits." Cersei stiffened. "Leave our throne. It's rubble." Arya let bitterness infuse the voice, remembering the lion's ceaseless pride. The throne room collapsed. The Iron Throne is buried under a mountain of stone. Stone can be cleared. Cersei's jaw tightened, wine sloshing. Rubble can be rebuilt. Arya leaned forward, allowing the flicker of torchlight to reveal an invented bruise along the mask's cheek. "We cannot rebuild a dynasty if we are dead. Come south with me. Rally those still loyal. When the Dragon Queen falters, as all tyrants do, we return." Cersei regarded him in silence, weighing strategy. The longer she considered, the easier the kill. Arya's dagger hilt warmed in her sleeve. Yet a sliver of something unexpected pierced her. Sorrow. Not for Cersei, never, but for Jaime. This man whose face she wore, who had once sworn to kill for love, then died trying to save it. She felt the rough seam along the mask's edge and wondered whether his ghost hovered now, fury or relief in its silent eyes. "I will go," Cersei declared at last, voice small. "With you." She set the goblet aside, rising. Her fingers laced his. "But swear this is not another trick. Swear you will not abandon me again." Arya forced Jaime's voice to honey. "I swear, my love." When Cersei turned toward the wardrobe to gather a cloak, Arya followed. The queen brushed aside velvet gowns to reveal a recess in the stone. A cavity cradling a small chest of gold coins and a bundled parchment sealed with the lion's sigil. Arya glimpsed inked words. "Treaty with the Iron Bank." So many webs. She stepped closer, silent as snowfall, dagger poised. Cersei bent to retrieve the bundle. Her nape glimmered white beneath loosened hair. Arya's pulse hammered. Steel met flesh in a single curve of motion. A dancer's arctodote. The blade pierced where spine met skull. Cersei froze, mouth a shocked circle. No scream, only the stutter of breath as bright blood spilled like molten rubies across the parchments. She swayed, eyes filling with recognition. For an instant, Jaime's reflection surfaced in those eyes. Then, the spark expired. Arya eased her down upon silks, folding limbs gently, like tucking a babe to rest. It struck her as morbid that mercy and murder could share identical gestures. She knelt. Moonlight bathed the room, silvering blood to black. She peeled off the mask, skin sticky. Cool air kissed her face. Cersei's glassy eyes stared upward. Arya whispered the prayer of the many-faced god. Old Bravosy words carried across narrow seas. Then she closed Cersei's lids with fingertips careful as a sister's. Moments passed before she noticed the hush, deeper than before, as though the castle itself held its breath in reverence or fear. Outside the window, the battered city seemed to glow faintly. Lanterns lighting fractured streets, beacon fires on shattered towers. People below would wake tomorrow and find their queen dead. Perhaps they would never learn how, or by whose hand. Care might bloom or chaos might spread, yet Arya's part was done. Vengeance, justice, retribution, whatever name she chose, had been delivered. Stillness broke when distant clangor rose, a signal bell somewhere near the main gate. Unsullied patrol, perhaps. Arya steadied, donned Jaime's mask again, hastily this time, and strode to the corridor. She left the dagger embedded in Cersei's skull. Some gestures needed permanence. A rustle of footsteps echoed below. She paused on the stairwell, eyes searching. Lannister soldiers were mustering, confused, roused by rumors that their queen's door was barred from within. They had yet to see the corpse. Arya weighed options. Flee now as Jaime, vanish amidst their panic, or cast off the mask and slip out as a nameless servant. She chose neither. Instead, she walked boldly into their path. A captain wearing dented lion plate raised his sword. "My lord, what?" "The queen sleeps," she rasped, voice hoarse. "No one disturbs. She dismisses all until dawn. Post 2 at her chamber and keep the corridor clear." The captain hesitated. Arya fixed him with a glare so cold it felt carved from Winterfell's godswood. Doubt melted. He saluted, barking orders. Soldiers peeled away like reeds in a river current. Arya moved on, descending marble steps that spooled endlessly downward, each level a darker womb of memory. When finally she emerged into the courtyard again, dawn tinged gray on the horizon, a bruise finding shape in the sky. She slipped behind the weeping lions at the gate, stripped the mask, folded it into the satchel, and vanished down an alley where beggars dozed under broken carts. There she burned Jaime's face, oils flaring green, watching leather bubble and blacken. The smell of scorched flesh rose like incense. In its curl of smoke, she glimpsed Ned's stern smile, Sansa's quiet resilience, Jon's brooding oath. Family, anchor and compass. The Starks had always paid their debts in blood, but tonight one weight at least was lifted. She turned toward the harbor where the dawn gate stood pried open, hulls bobbing gentle beyond. She would find a horse, perhaps slip north by narrow road, perhaps sail with sail sails bound for Bravos. Paths were many for a girl with no name. Yet as she walked beneath sagging banners, she felt not the emptiness of a faceless disciple, but the steadiness of a wolf tracing paw prints home. Behind her, the red keep loomed, silent save for the crackle of curtains catching flame. Someone would open Cersei's chamber soon. They would find blood pooled in tapestry threads, eyes sealed against judgment, lips parted as if to gasp a final, thwarted command. They would wonder why Jaime Lannister's cloak lay tossed across a settee with no night in sight. Rumor would bloat and swell, birthing legends of love and betrayal, of ghosts walking halls at midnight. Arya would hear these tales years hence, perhaps over a mug of Dornish red in some sun-drenched port. She would smile, not for joy, not for pride, but because some wounds required stories to scab. As dawn's first true ray pierced the ruins, it painted the city gold, tricking the rubble into glimmer. People emerged, blinking, like survivors of a long winter. Children chased pigeons between rubble piles. Traders hoisted baskets of stale bread. Even grief must eat. Arya watched from the far bank of the Blackwater, where willow branches trailed silver in the tide. She felt the river's pulse through mossy stones, the same river that had once borne her on a pale horse fleeing war. Now it offered passage again, though her heart sought north. Always north. When the skiffman asked her name, she answered none. When he asked her destination, she said, "Where the air is clean." He laughed as though it were jest, then pushed off. Water lapped hull planks in muted applause. Each splash erased a little more of the night behind. Yet memories are cussed things. They cling to lungs the way smoke clings to rafters. As the Blackwater widened, Arya closed her eyes and tasted them. The copper sweetness of Cersei's final breath, the burnt lavender stench of the torchlit mask, the iron tang of dragons' scorched streets. She tasted Winterfell mead too, and Mother's apple cakes, and Bran's cheer when he beat Robb at sticks. Life layered itself across her palate, sweet, bitter, salt, until flavor became meaning. Night gave birth to morning. The city dwindled to a bruise on the horizon. The skiff's oars creaked a patient rhythm, and Arya sat, cloak drawn tight, a wolf in borrowed wool. Somewhere beyond the sunrise lay whatever future a girl with too many names might claim. She would walk roads uncharted, kneel before odd gods, dine with strangers who feared her quiet. And perhaps, at journey's end, wherever end waited, she would strip off the last mask and meet her own reflection once more. For now, she allowed herself a single breath of peace. Cersei had fallen, not by dragon or uprising, but by a story turned against itself. A lion slain by its likeness. There was symmetry in that. And for Arya Stark, a measure of justice carved at the price of mercy withheld. She looked down at her hands, pale and steady in the growing light, and felt them tremble at last. Violet dawn spilled across the black water like bruised silk, and the skiff rode its muted shimmer toward the mouth of the river. Arya hunched beneath her tattered cloak, face slick with salt blown off the waves and sweat cooling on her brow. The burn of sleepless hours weighed on her lids, yet she would not close them. In each gust she heard distant hoofbeats, in every groan of the hull the clank of chain, ghostly reminders that pursuit, imagined or real, could rise from the mist at any moment. The boatman, an elderly riverman with knotty hands, rowed in steady rhythm, eyes down, as though fearing a glance might invite some doom traveling in her shadow. She had told him nothing beyond a promise of gold, pressing a coin into his palm and directing him toward the northern shore. But when the first pale gleam of the sun limned the smoky horizon, he slowed. "Rivers ended," he rasped, voice like gravel beneath water. "Sea floods here. Not many dare further in a craft this small." His words drifted, unchallenged, for a breath. Then Arya looked up, studying the widening waters. Far to port, charred piers clawed from the riverbank, King's Landing's once great harbors, reduced to toothless stumps. Gulls keened over floating detritus. To starboard, low cliffs bit at the sky, scorched grass still smoldering after dragonfire. Silence, save for waves lapping splintered ribs of wrecked ships. She reached inside her tunic, withdrew another coin, and dropped it into his palm. "North Bank. Any inlet that offers cover." Her voice sounded raw, even to her own ears. The man frowned but turned the skiff. Muscles knotted under frayed sleeves as he fought the early tide. Arya's gaze lingered on the distant red keep. Already banners shifted atop its ragged heights, black flags bearing the three-headed red dragon. Daenerys Targaryen claimed victory within those walls, or thought she had. Arya wondered whether the Dragon Queen yet knew a different war had ended there hours earlier, a war waged not with fire, but with needle-thin steel and borrowed skin. Dragons devour, assassins excise. She doubted Daenerys would appreciate the distinction. The skiff finally nosed into a narrow channel winding into reeds high as a man's shoulders. The boatman shipped oars and gestured to a soggy hummock bridging water and scrub. "This is as far as I go." Arya stepped out, boots sinking into cold mud. She turned, handed him the last of her coins. "Tell no one. Safer for us both." "Nendo." He nodded once, gaze sliding away. A push of the oar and he vanished into reeds, leaving only concentric ripples. She watched until the hush closed over the water, then started north, along a deer trail pressed into the marsh. Tall grasses swished against her thighs. With each step, dawn brightened. Birds flitted overhead, and the stink of ash faded beneath scents of brine and crushed reeds. Freedom carried its own fragrance. Yet memory traveled with her like iron shackles. Snapshots of Cersei's frozen face, Jaime's sagging mask in her palm, the soundless sigh when dagger parted spine. She pressed on. By mid-morning the path met firmer ground, rising toward low hills. She paused beside a brook to drink, and only then did she hear hoofbeats. Faint, distant, but drawing nearer. Instinct flared. She crouched behind a fallen trunk, hand curling round needle's familiar grip. The sword felt small after nights wielding a dagger, but its comfort warmed her knuckles. A single rider emerged through the scrub, a silver-haired man in worn leathers, gray cloak clasped by a pin shaped like a seashell. He rode unhurried, head bent, the posture of one burdened more by thought than fear. Arya narrowed her eyes, waiting until he drew abreast of her hiding place. Recognition struck like the twang of a bowstring. Davos Seaworth. She stood, letting needle's tip angle just enough to reflect morning light. Davos reined abruptly, hand flying to the hilt of a short sword. "Seven hells," he muttered, squinting. "Little wolf?" The nickname teased a flicker of warmth inside her. She straightened. "Ah, you have sharp eyes, sir." He slid from the saddle, mud sucking at boots. "I sailed half the seas of this world with eyes sharper than fishmongers' knives. Hard to mistake a Stark for someone else once you've seen the gaze." He studied her, taking in the grime, the dried blood flecked on her collar. Concern carved new lines into his weather-beaten face. "I feared you'd burned with the rest." "I don't burn easy." She sheathed needle. "So it seems." He glanced southward, toward the smoke-veiled city. "Storm's over, yet the sea still stinks of char and sorrow." His voice gentled. "Come, I've a horse strong enough for two. I ride to Jon." A pang, sudden and deep, flashed beneath her ribs. "Jon's alive?" North of the city, camping with what remains of the northern host. "He means to speak with the queen." Davos' tone weighted that final word with misgivings. Arya hesitated, gaze drifting to the broken skyline. She had imagined slipping north unseen, leaving the Dragon Queen to her throne of corpses. Yet here was a thread tugging her back, not to the capital, but to Jon, to family. She nodded once. Davos helped her mount behind him, and they set off. For hours they rode through charred orchards and scorched meadows where grass still crackled under hoof. Crows convened atop black skeletons of trees, muttering in company. Now and again they passed refugees trudging opposite, clutching sacks of salvage, eyes hollow. Davos offered bread from his saddlebag to a mother shielding her babe from sun. She wept soundlessly, accepting. Arya watched, jaw tight. Vengeance had its echoes. Every victim of Cersei lay dead, but so too did innocents burned under dragonfire. She wondered whether Daenerys slept soundly. Near dusk, they crested a ridge. Below, a plain sloped toward a ring of low hills. Banners snapped in cooling breeze. Deery wolves on gray fields, Baratheon stags, Tully trouts. Tents clustered like mushrooms after rain. Fires flickered, sending sparks skyward. Above all, the northern sigil flew highest. Davos waved to sentries who recognized him, and raised the main flap to Jon's command pavilion. Arya slipped inside, heart thrumming anew. Jon stood over a broad map weighted by daggers. Armor unbuckled, tunic sweat-stained, curls plastered to his brow. Yet his eyes lifted the instant she entered, and surprise melted into fierce relief. "Arya, daughter you." The whisper cracked mid-syllable. He crossed the space in 3 strides, pulling her to his chest. She breathed him in, leather, horse, campfire, squeezing back until ribs creaked. When at last they parted, his gaze swept her for wounds. "I thought you stayed with the Hound. After the city fell, I couldn't." "He saved me once more," she said softly, "then fell with his brother." The sentence sat heavy between them. Jon bowed his head. Davos cleared his throat, seating himself near the tent wall to grant them space. Jon guided Arya to a stool by the map. "Dort don't sehen. You look unchanged." He meant older, wearier. She scanned the wooden markers. Unsullied phalanxes ringing King's Landing, Dothraki banners along the Roserod, Northern and Riverlands forces here. The city changed more than I did. He studied her carefully. "You have the look of someone who's done something final." She met his eyes. No lie would fool the brother who once played at swords with her in Winterfell's yard. "Cersei's dead." Jon inhaled sharply. "How?" "By her brother's hand," she answered, then added, "but not really his." Silence deepened as realization dawned. She laid it plain, speaking of masks and stab wounds, of corridors and redirects, while Jon listened, face unreadable save for a wince when she described peeling Jaime's skin. "Varys said the faceless are myth," he murmured when she finished. "Varys is ashes now." Jon exhaled. With Cersei gone, Daenerys may claim the throne uncontested. Yet the realm bleeds. The lords of Westeros want Neil to more fire. He rubbed his brow. "Arya, the queen burned thousands after the bells. Tyrion means to counsel mercy, but if mercy is left in her," Arya said, "it's hiding well." Davos shifted. "Aye, and Lord Tyrion was arrested at first light. Freed his brother last night. Daenerys saw it as treason." Arya's stomach clenched. Jaime's absent body would compound confusion, perhaps condemn Tyrion doubly. She had not foreseen that ripple. A ripple now crashing as a wave. Jon paced. "She means to hold executions tomorrow, traitors and those who resist her claim." This morning she spoke to the Unsullied of liberating the world. His lips tightened. She asked for my loyalty, my love, my fealty. She has one. I cannot give her all. Arya read the storm in his eyes. Duty to realm, to family, to an oath sworn to dragons. You can't serve a tyrant, she said. Jon stopped pacing. What if I already have? Night wind rattled the pavilion. Davos rose. Dark thoughts won't brighten with brooding. Eat, lad, then decide. But decision would not wait. Dawn would bring hangings and beheadings. Tyrion might die by dragonfire. Arya's kill had opened one door, but sealed another. Jon turned to Arya. Will you help me speak with her? Perhaps knowing Cersei is dead by human hands will temper her. Arya shook her head. She'll see only defiance. She burnt innocence to break Cersei. She won't thank me for stealing her victory. She looked to Davos. Can we free Tyrion tonight? The smuggler's grin crept halfway. I've slipped more guarded cells than a flea's market mule. But freeing him only enrages her further. Let her rage, Jon muttered. Rage doesn't make a queen. It makes another terror. Arya stood. Then you know what must be done. Jon's eyes darkened. I kill one queen and the realm sees kinslayer, oathbreaker. Or savior, Davos said softly. If the realm survives at all. Jon's shoulders slumped. War within. He looked to Arya, as if begging sister's counsel. But her path held no counsel, only truth. Shall burn Winterfell next time someone says no. Silence answered, heavy as greystone. At length, Jon breathed out, trembling. I swore to protect the realm. His voice broke. Yet every oath I take leads to death. Sometimes death is the only wall worth raising, Davos said. Jon lifted his gaze, decision coalescing like frost. If I do this, I stand alone. Arya stepped forward. You never stood alone. She unbuckled needle, pressed it into his hands. I carry other blades now, but this was forged for me by our brother. Take it. Remember who you are. Jon closed fingers round the familiar hilt. Eyes glistened. He bowed his head to her, a silent benediction, then looked to Davos. Free Tyrion. If things go ill, he'll need the chance to sail for his life. The Onion Knight placed a steady hand on Jon's shoulder, then slipped away into night. Arya reached for Jon's arm. When? Tonight. She asked me to come to the throne room at dawn. His expression twisted. A man sentencing both himself and someone he loved. Rest. If I walk back out alive, we'll ride north together. If not, don't. She squeezed harder. Walk out. He mustered a thin smile. Old try? They sat till late, sharing a heel of bread, speaking softly of home. The weirwood's crimson leaves, Bran's distant calm, Sansa's iron poise. When words dwindled, Arya rose, brushed his cheek with hers. For father, she whispered. He pressed his forehead to hers, and a lifetime of wars and winters flowed between them. She left the pavilion, seeking the edge of camp where shadows pooled thickest. Sleep would not come, but she stretched on damp grass, eyes to stars. She searched for Nymeria's pack among constellations, for the shape of a dire wolf racing across black velvet sky. She found only scattered sparks. Yet sparks can light fires greater than dragons ever breathe. Sometime before dawn, hooves woke her. She sprang up as Jon mounted his horse alone, cloak billowing. He did not look back. She watched him ride toward the city, silhouette swallowed by ash-hazed dark. A tremor rippled her chest, the echo of a prayer she no longer remembered how to speak. She could not sit idle. She found a fast gelding, saddled it, and followed from a distance, weaving between tents and drowsy sentries. Past burnt farmhouses she rode, maintaining the gap, until unsullied patrols forced her to dismount and skirt foothills on foot. From a rocky outcrop she saw Jon tether his horse near the King's Road gate, then stride into the gutted city alone. She waited, heart pounding. Wraith-like dawn seeped up, bruising the eastern rim. Bells did not ring, none left to ring them. Instead, a horn moaned, long and low. Signal for all Unsullied to assemble before the Red Keep. Gray ranks flowed like spilled ink across the courtyard. Dothraki riders circled the outskirts, ululating cries that pierced morning hush. Arya crept among fractured columns until she perched atop a balcony looking down on the vast ruin of the throne room. Roof gone, great windows shattered, walls scorched. Yet the Iron Throne, or what remained, stood upon a mound of fused swords half melted by dragonfire, blades twisted like the ribs of a long-dead leviathan. Daenerys ascended a newly hewn stair of stone. Her dark hair whipped in wind. Her black and red cloak snapped behind like a banner of flame. Drogon remained unseen, though the whir of vast wings had passed overhead not an hour earlier. She paused before the throne, eyes shining with something beyond triumph, rapture perhaps. Fingertips brushed molten steel. Arya's pulse hammered. She crouched lower, hidden behind a crenellation, gaze shifting to the entrance below where Jon emerged. His cloak billowed against charred stone. Snow-like ash drifted in the shaft of light between them. Daenerys turned. Joy lit her face, but flickered when she saw a needle at Jon's hip. Words exchanged, inaudible at this distance, yet Arya felt them in her bones. Entreaty, plea, confession. She saw the queen's shoulders stiffen, mouth tighten. Jon's posture wilted, despair radiating. He stepped closer, lifted a hand as though to cradle her cheek. Daenerys softened, only a moment, then leaned into his embrace. Lips met. A hush seemed to settle on the world. Even ash froze midair. Needle flashed. A whisper of steel beneath ribs. The queen's eyes widened, confusion blooming. Then grief, then nothing. Jon held her as she sagged. Blood seeped crimson across black leather. Twin tears carved paths down his cheeks, cutting through ash. He whispered to her still lips, though no ear remained to hear. A roar cracked the heavens. Drogon swept from behind a broken spire, wings beating storms. He landed upon shattered flags outside, rubble cascading. Jon released the body, stumbling back. Arya's nails dug stone as the dragon nudged its fallen mother, keening a guttural dirge that vibrated ground and marrow alike. Yellow eyes fixed on Jon, flames building behind slit pupils. Jon stood unmoving, shoulders squared. Arya half rose, impulse screaming to run, to distract, to do something. Drogon reared, throat glowing. But instead of burning Jon, he unleashed fire upon the Iron Throne, the twisted swords melting into glowing slag, dripping down the dais in rivers of molten metal. Fury turned to grief, grief to exhaustion. Drogon lifted Daenerys' corpse carefully in massive claws, wings thundering. He ascended swirling smoke and vanished eastward. Queen clutched as though she weighed nothing. Arya exhaled a breath she did not know she held. Jon knelt amid cooling ash, alone, unsullied, flooded through broken doors, gray eyes widening at the scene. Throne destroyed, queen gone, only the man they once named King's Slayer? Kinslayer? Standing. Grey Worm stalked forward, spear leveled. Jon offered no resistance as shackles clamped wrists. Arya retreated into shadows, mind racing. She had claimed one queen, Jon another. Now armies milled leaderless, vengeful. Civil war loomed unless words were woven quick and tight. And Tyrion, freed by Davos, might be their only tongue. She found Davos half a league north, leading a limping donkey laden with blankets. His face told her everything. He had seen Drogon pass, had guessed. He spoke before she could. Your brother? Alive, prisoner. The words tasted of ice. Tyrion walks free, he said. He begged me ride with him to meet the remaining lords, samplers from every faction, on Dragonstone in 10 days. Parley for peace. Nah. She nodded slowly. We'll need every tongue and tale we can muster. Will Jon speak? Davos asked. Jon will accept whatever judgment they decree, so long as the realm survives. She set her gaze on the horizon, where Drogon had vanished. But first he must outlive unsullied justice. Davos sighed. Grey Worm lost half his men to Cersei's scorpions. He answers only to duty. And duty says traitors die. Not if traitors save the world. She turned to him. We slip into the city tonight, free Jon as you freed Tyrion. Then we ride to Dragonstone and let the lords decide. Beni Jaime. Davos raised a brow. Eh? And how many masks you got left, girl? Enough, she said, though truth sat thinner than she liked. Jaime's face was ash, but the halls of the Red Keep held other skins yet unclaimed. She felt the pull of the many-faced god, each death a debt, unpaid. But debts could wait. They camped that night in silence, while the northern host reeled from news carried by frantic scouts. Dawn lit sorrow across 100 faces, but confusion held fury at bay. Unsullied patrols ringed the capital, allowing no one in or out. Rumor claimed a council of lords would convene in the dragon pit to negotiate. Grey Worm had no wish to rule. He sought only justice. How justice was defined remained open war. For 3 days, Arya plotted. She and Davos slipped along forgotten catacombs beneath the city, paths once used by Targaryen princes to smuggle paramours. They mapped guard rotations, marked where Unsullied slept. They scarcely slept. On the 4th night, when half the camp attended a funeral pyre for fallen Dothraki, they struck. Arya wore the face of a Dothraki groom she had waylaid by the river. Guilt pricked, but necessity cut deeper. Davos followed a pace behind, hood pulled low. They carried barrels of wildfire. They claimed to have scavenged in burnt streets. Actually, river water dyed green. Unsullied guards allowed them through to the dungeons below Maegor's Holdfast, keen to rid the keep of volatile cargo. Inside, they found Jon in a cell of black stone, wrists raw from chains yet spirit strangely calm. He blinked when the Dothraki groom hissed his name. Then recognition dawned behind the ruse. Arya tossed him a key pilfered from a sleeping jailer. Davos kept watch at Corridor's Bend. Jon stood free, but sorrow weighed heavier than shackles. "Where will I run to?" he murmured. "With us," she answered. "South to Dragonstone. Tyrion gathers lords." He didn't move. "I killed her." "I know. She wanted to break the wheel. I shattered her instead." She met his eyes. "The wheel was forged by blood. It breaks only with blood. Yours buys nothing." Footsteps echoed. Davos hissed signal. They slipped down a narrow stair, past cells of moaning prisoners, up a ladder to an old stable exit sealed by rubble. Davos produced a pick, pried stones until a gap yawned. Cool night air rushed in, sweet with ocean salt. They clambered out to a moonlit courtyard where grass poked through broken flagstones. Horses stomached from Davos' earlier work stood saddled. They mounted and rode. Gates unmanned thanks to funeral fires gave egress. Once beyond torch range, they spurred north along coastal dunes, not daring the main road. Dawn found them on a narrow spit, with Dragonstone rising jagged in distance across Blackwater Bay. At a fishing village, they secured a skiff. While Davos bartered for sails, Arya and Jon sat on a seawall, feet dangling above barnacle-crusted rock. Waves foamed around pilings. "I have no right to sit among lords," Jon said. "Lords lack right to breathe without the small folk." Arya shot back. He managed a weak smile. "You sound like Tyrion. Tyrion sounds like Sansa. Sansa sounds like Mother." A pause. "We learn from ghosts." Gullcry filled the gap. Arya touched his shoulder. "Whatever verdict awaits, you'll face it. I'll be there. But if they judge death, then I'll ask the many-faced god to wait a little longer." She glanced seaward where a shadow moved beneath waves, perhaps a whale migrating north. "Life owes you truth before it owes you death." Davos returned, leading them to the skiff. They set sail on midday tide, Dragonstone's basalt towers looming ahead like talons. Tyrion greeted them on shore, leaner, eyes ringed by sleepless schemes. Soft disbelief turned to fierce embrace when he saw Jon. He led them to a cavern within the scaly keep, where seated in torchlight waited Samwell Tarly, Gendry Baratheon, newly legitimized by decree signed before Daenerys' death, Yara Greyjoy, Sir Brienne in gleaming white cloak, Prince Gendry's motherless bastard sister, even Edmure Tully ragged yet proud, Each rose at Jon's arrival. Words spilled, conflicting claims. Yara demanded independence for Iron Islands. Brienne spoke for Sansa's right of rule. Sam mooted the notion of letting the people choose. The hall roiled with argument, until Arya stepped forward, voice ringing. She spoke of Cersei's demise, of dragonfire on innocence, of a realm sickened by tyranny after tyranny. She told them every coin had two faces, every fate two edges. She laid needle on the stone table. Power taken by fire returns to ash. Choose someone who will not seek power, or choose more fire. Silence followed. Tyrion addressed the gathering. I once believed stories of good kings and just queens. Now I believe in hearts that know regret. Jon Snow regrets every death he's caused, even those necessary. That is the ruler we need. Jon shook his head. I will not. Sansa's voice carried from the doorway. Arya, startled, had not seen her arrive. The Lady of Winterfell strode forward, auburn hair braided with northern silver. Then name me queen in the north and keep your 7 kingdoms. We will not kneel again. Murmurs rose. Yara shrugged. If north breaks free, why not Iron Islands? Edmure stammered. Brienne looked pained. Sam sighed. Then Arya spoke once more, softer. Break the kingdom instead. 7 shards for 7 peoples. Let each rule itself, bound by alliance, not chain. She gazed at every lord, her eyes a mirror for their fatigued souls. Westeros has been stitched together by fire too long. Unstitch it. The idea rippled outward like dawn across water. Objections fell, but none as fierce as before. Even Yara nodded. Secession fitted her salt nature. Gendry weighed loyalty to Stormlands. Baratheons once answered only to themselves. Sam's dream of democracy found partial bloom in councils within each realm. Brienne thought of honor served by fewer battlefields. By Candle's gutter, agreement formed. Jon would sail far, beyond walls rebuilt, beyond crowns. A new council would meet annually to arbitrate trade and war. 7 realms reborn from ruin. Jon accepted banishment north of the wall. Self-imposed exile. I belonged to Wild Snow long before thrones, he said. Tyrion volunteered to accompany, hunger for fresh start glimmering. As dawn streaked Dragonstone's sky, Arya climbed the battlements with Sansa Dottai. Sister's gloved hand found hers. I feared losing you, Sansa whispered. You never will. Arya leaned against the parapet. But I can't stay. Sansa's smile held sadness. West of Westeros. Beyond maps where no queen's shadow falls. Right, if you find quills out there. Arya laughed. I'll send ravens taught to swim. They embraced beneath shrieking gulls. Below, Jon and Tyrion prepared a black-sailed ship. Davos stowed casks. Sam checked ledgers for grain shipments north. The wheel indeed had shattered, not by one stroke, but by many, fractures radiating into something new. That evening, Arya found an empty cabin on a Braavosi trader bound first for Braavos, then further west, along rumor-thin routes. She sharpened a small knife as waves slapped hull planks. In the blade's shine she glimpsed a face unburdened by masks. Wolfish, curious, weathered. Hers. The ship's bell tolled departure. Sea winds filled canvas, snapping taut. Arya stepped onto the deck. Horizon burned gold against purple. She breathed deep, salt, tar, possibility. King's Landing faded astern, its rebuilt towers mere suggestion of lines against haze. Somewhere within those walls, children chased pigeons again. Somewhere along a cold river, a direwolf ghost padded between birches. Somewhere in ghost-haunted halls, Cersei's echo dared no longer speak. Arya Stark turned northwest, toward a sunset path, unwalked. She closed her eyes, felt the deck rise and fall beneath bare feet, and whispered her own name, not as promise of vengeance, but as vow of becoming. The ship creaked, sails billowed, and the world turned, wheel broken, stars eager to chart new stories. The first night Arya spent at sea, the moon rose russet, a copper coin against velvet, and the saffron gull creaked beneath the weight of unfamiliar stars. She lay awake in her narrow berth with the steady suck rush of waves against hull planks tapping the side of her skull like a slow drum. The odor of tar and oak pitched with the rocking, mingling pleasantly with the sharp tang of brine that sifted through the open port. Somewhere below, cargo nets groaned, while overhead the canvas snapped at errant gusts. Every sound threaded itself into a half-remembered song of ports and voyages she had once heard sung by Braavosi sailors on the quayside outside the House of Black and White. A song of the sunset sea and the promise of lands so far west. The moonlit spray glittered upside down, where maps became blank parchment and the gods grew silent in wonder. Sleep came late, but when it did, it dragged her down as heavily as Winterfell snow. Her dreams were fragments. Ned Stark's voice echoing through a fogged godswood, Gendry hammering steel by torchlight, the hound's rough laughter beneath a sky of cinders, faces shifting like loose pages. At dawn she woke with a start, heart racing, and took a moment to remember where she was, not in a dungeon, not beneath ruined rafters, but on a deck that smelled of possibilities. The voyage passed in slow hours, measured by gull cries. The saffron gull carried salt fish, Braavosi lace, and a handful of passengers paying good silver for the safety of her hull. A Lysini spice merchant named Corlys, a silent Norvashi priest whose beard was bound by golden bells, a trio of Pentoshi hedge knights, returning from sellsword contracts, pockets full of coin and eyes alive with schemes. Arya kept mostly to herself, but she studied them the way one studies clouds before rain, observing subtle shifts in posture, in tone, in gaze. She ate little, stretched on deck each morning to keep muscles supple, and practiced drawing the thin Braavosi stiletto she had taken for this journey. Needle lay wrapped in leather within her chest, its familiar comfort a heartbeat away, but she left it sheathed. A Stark sword was a Stark promise, and here she traveled as no one in particular. Neither queen killer nor wolf girl, only a silent silhouette with calloused hands and watchful eyes. On the fifth afternoon, the Tatters, a brawny hedge knight with scarred cheeks resembling torn cloth, tried his luck. He sauntered beside her at the rail where she stared westward into grape-dark roll of waves. He offered a wineskin, tipped his chin toward the forecastle cabins. "Voyages are long," he said, breath redolent of sour, pale grape. "Company eases tedium." Arya accepted the skin, raised it to her lips, then poured the trickle of wine overboard. "For the maiden," she said, voice flat. She handed the empty back. "She hates sour wine." The Tatters frowned, half amused. "The maiden? A god." She stepped closer, so close he smelled the clean salt of her hair. "A god who punishes those who disturb her worship." Even dulled by drink, he read something lethal in her gaze. He chuckled, palms raised, backed off. The next sunrise he and his companions kept dice games under the stern castle awning, glancing her way only when they thought she would not notice. By journey's end, they would remember her as the shadow who bled no words, only quiet threat. She preferred that. Fear built higher walls than courtesy. Weeks passed. Weather held fair save one squall that rattled masts like spears and shattered a yardarm. Crew cursed, rigging screamed, but the gull pressed on. During the storm, Arya climbed the ratlines without thinking, agile as the ship's cat that clung blinking to a spar. She lashed loose ropes, cut others, hauled canvas with the deckhands. Rain plastered her hair, thunder cracked overhead, yet exhilaration bloomed hot in her chest. When the clouds tore open to reveal a ribbon of clear sky, she clung to a spar high above the decks and laughed, wild free. For those few heartbeats, she felt not a killer, but a child racing across Winterfell's rooftops again, footfalls light as secrets. The captain, an aging Mormon named Lanicio, watched her descend after the worst had passed. He stroked his salt and pepper beard thoughtfully. "You've sailed before," he observed. She only shrugged. That night he invited her to the cramped chart room where amber lanterns rocked with the swell. There he unfurled parchment stained by brine and ringed with crabbed notations in 3 languages. He traced a faded line that arced beyond the lonely light, the westernmost lighthouse of the Iron Islands, into a pale void marked simply, "Here be Leviathans." "I've sailed half that far," he admitted, fingertip tapping the edge of the void. Turned back when water tasted sweeter than the shivering sea and stars grew unfamiliar. I plan another attempt come next year, finances willing. His dark eyes gleamed with the hunger of all explorers. I'll need a small crew unafraid of ghosts. Arya studied the map's emptiness. What do you expect to find? Edge of the world, perhaps, or nothing at all. He chuckled. But nothing is still more than staying home. She felt the lure of that horizon like a rope around her ribs. Yet caution whispered, a dead captain drinks no wonders. She asked, what killed the others who tried? Storms, scurvy, mutiny. The usual. He rolled the chart. Think on it. A good blade's welcome. She thanked him, returned to her berth, lay awake with sails creaking overhead. West called. But another voice, softer, tugged from the east. Winterfell's hearth crackle, Sansa's measured laughter, Bran's unwavering calm perched in his seat of quiet seeing. Promises to herself warred in her blood. 2 nights later, when Lanicchio repeated his invitation, she declined. Not yet, she said simply. He accepted with a nod. Captains respected tides more than refusals, and he charted their final approach to Bravos. They made harbor beneath the Titan's shadow at midnight on an autumn morning. The colossal bronze shook the sea with its roar, announcing a ship's arrival, gulls swirling like confetti around its helm. The saffron gull threaded the purple-green waters of the lagoon toward the purple-slated roofs and tapered bell towers, oarsmen singing an old Volantine work chant that echoed between seawalls. Arya stood at the bow, wind whipping stray hair across her face. Bravos, the city of canals, of secretive courtesans, of almond pastries dusted with sugared snow. She had danced its alleyways before as cat of the canals, selling oysters, and observing more than any child should. Here she learned the many-faced god's tongue. Here she had died in darkness to be reborn in silence. She disembarked with a small purse of silver, and walked the familiar maze of flagstones and bridges. At a market near Moonpool, she bought a fig-glazed bun and ate it slowly, letting sweetness ground her. She watched a pair of Sea Lord's guards harangue a pickpocket, recognized the swirl of tension in their stance, and turned away before steel flashed. Some cycles never changed. She had no wish to visit the House of Black and White, though memories orbited each step like hidden moons. Instead, she sought the purple harbor where trade vessels for distant ports sometimes docked. There she found a Lorathi bark prepping to sail south along the summer sea, then west along winds rumored to skirt the Sunset Isles. She spoke with its quartermaster, a woman with gold teeth and a scar tracking from brow to chin. Passage could be bartered, but such a voyage would take months, even years, with no guarantee of return. Arya almost agreed. But when the quartermaster asked her name for the ledger, a chill spread in her gut. She could offer no alias that fit. Each felt brittle, wrong. Identity remained malleable, only while vengeance required. With the wheel broken, she craved roots again. That evening she sat on the quay, feet dangling above black water flecked with harbor lights. She unwrapped needle, ran a thumb along its edge. In the mirror of the blade she saw her own reflection. The line of her jaw so like her mother's, the gray eyes of her father, the new hardness of cheekbones that belonged only to war. She whispered the names she once murmured each night. Joffrey, Merentrant, Cersei? They were gone. Her list was empty. What fills a life when lists run out? A gull shrieked overhead, swooping low, startling her. She looked up, caught a glimpse of brown-white feathers, and something clicked deep inside. Ghost memory of Nymeria's pack already roaming Riverland's forests beneath red-turned leaves. A wolf without a pack howls to nothing. She rose. Next morning, she sold her passage voucher back to the Lorathi, used the coin to hire a swift skiff bound across narrow waters to Saltpans, a small harbor north of Blackwater Bay. From there, she could join a caravan for the King's Road. The decision felt abrupt, and yet settled, the way snow decides to melt come gentle spring. West would wait. But family was winter, constant and cold and necessary. Weeks later, the first frost of deep autumn frosted Joan's beard as he gazed across the white entablature of the haunted forest. He stood atop a crag of ancient ice, ragged firs flapping in a howl of north wind. At his side Tyrion shivered beneath a layered cloak of black wool and rabbit hide, breath pluming silver. Behind them, a thin queue of free folk pioneers wound between tumbled stones, dragging sledges laden with woven baskets, wooden beams, sacks of grain. Jon had promised them new beginnings. Now he meant to deliver exile-turned mission. They had passed Weatherall Forlorn, the last manned outpost of the Watch, 4 days earlier. The old tower's ragged banner, black field, white tree, flapped listlessly. Fewer than 20 sworn brothers remained, but they had welcomed Jon back not as a traitor, but as a brother of ancient oath. When he revealed his intent to guide willing free folk deeper into the thawed forests beyond, they had nodded. The Watch's purpose was to stand behind those who pass into unknown, not bar them. The land had changed. Milder summers over the past decade melted permafrost, coaxing green where once lay endless stone. Game grew more plentiful. Rivers ran stronger. Small pockets of forest children ruins whispered beneath mossy groves, and in some dell Tyrion swore he saw the white bones of giants half buried by earth. Though he kept this observation mostly to himself, lest newcomers balk. Jon's conscience remained heavy as his sword, but purpose lightened him. Each task, felled tree, erected tent, shared haunch of venison, felt like another brick in atonement's wall. Nights by the great communal fires he would watch children from Hardhome chase each other laughing. He sometimes thought of Daenerys' smile, the way hope had once lit her face, and he would excuse himself to stand among shadowed pines until first thaw of dawn. Tyrion kept near, seldom speaking of the Dragon Queen, yet often remembering her with a sip of rough pine ale poured into the snow. Silent libation. They did not call it guilt, they called it memory's toll. On the 19th day of settlement, the sun rose purple with dawn haze and Jon awoke to Ghost, nudging his palm. The direwolf's ears pricked toward the trail. Hoofbeats, muffled by forest duff. Jon rose, hand at Longclaw's hilt, though threats here were few and widely scattered. A scout's cry rang. A single rider approaches. Moments later the rider emerged, wrapped in a white cloak, mottled like birch bark, slender as a willow, the hood thrown back to reveal hair dark as ravens. Jon's breath caught. Arya slid from the saddle and walked into camp, as though she had trod the snow every morning of her life. Jon met her halfway, arms around her before he formed words. Tyrion blinked away sleep, took in the reunion, and grinned beneath his hood. "I've known we were expecting a guest, I'd have baked a cake." Arya smiled at him, her mouth quirking upward with mischief and fatigue both. "A cake would freeze solid, imp. Best keep your flour dry." Jon guided her to the largest fire, poured steaming spruce needle tea into a horn. "I thought you sailed west." "I turned my sails north instead." She sipped, steam veiling her eyes. Maps whispered empty promises. I missed voices that weren't echoes of my own mind. What of Sansa? Ruling well. She's called Queen of Snow now, though she prefers Lady of Winter. The north grows prosperous. Grain yields doubled this harvest. She's striking coin marked by the direwolf and the barrow of the first men. She sent wildlings entrepreneurs barrels of fermented white honey mead in trade. Arya smirked. Her quills never still. Jon's shoulders loosened, a burden partially lifted. And Bran? A shadow flickered across Arya's gaze. He remains elsewhere. Body in Winterfell, mind perched where winds carry secrets. I fear he sometimes forgets the warmth of his own hands. Monsieur Stahl? Jon nodded. Such possibility had haunted him too. But Ghost pressed his flank against Arya's thigh, tail sweeping. Comfort took forms beyond words. Later, Tyrion led Arya up a slope to show her the settlement's new watchtower. Fresh pine logs notched and stacked, roof thatched with sealskin. The imp spoke of his dream. A book chronicling free folk tales, giants, mammoths, the last kiss between moon and sun. He envisioned opening a small library here, storing lore in hides stretched taut. Arya listened, amused, while her eyes tracked ravens swirling overhead. By mid-morning, sun melted frost to reveal shy shoots beneath the snow. The free folk children showed Arya their carved bone flutes. She tried one, producing a reedy tune that made them giggle. She taught them how to flick a pebble with finger and thumb so it whistled, They taught her how to find sweet pin nuts in frozen cones. Exchange is the oldest coin, she thought. That night, as embers died, Jon sat with her apart from others on a rise overlooking silver treetops. The sky spilled with stars so bright they flooded the snow with color. Arya unwrapped needle laid across her knees. "I thought perhaps I'd give this back to Gendry," she murmured. "But the North may still need its point." Jon studied the blade. "Keep it. You carry better than any." She touched the fuller, etched with Micken's careful script. "Tell me you're happy." He gazed outward. "I'm useful. That may have to pass for happy." "Close enough," she conceded softly. "Maybe one day use becomes joy." A sharp quiet fell. A peace that was not absence of sound, but the gentle hum of life, unthreatened. Together they watched the aurora crest the horizon, ribbons of green dancing like silent song. South, the patchwork Seven Realms found uneasy balance. Without an iron throne, alliances frayed yet endured. Yara Greyjoy's black sails harried the stepstones until Triarchs of Myr paid gold for truce. The Reach under Lady Tala Tarly exported barley and craftsmen to the Riverlands, forging bonds sealed by mutual bread and stone. In Old Town, the Archmaesters debated a new calendar era, the Broken Wheel Age. They argued whether years should count from the date of Daenerys' death, or the signing of the Dragon Pit Accords that formalized the realm's independence. Scribes scratched quills to nubs, while the harbor bustled with trade unrestrained by King's Landing's tariffs. Brienne of Tarth, named Lord Commander of the Queen's Guard of Winter, toured southern realms with Podrick Payne to arbitrate disputes and spread word of northern justice. Impartial, swift, and mild, only when truth rang clear. She found Edmure Tully overseeing dredging of new channels to prevent Red Fork flooding. She found Gendry in Storm's End, forging a new code of coastal laws. She knelt by Shirion Baratheon's old reading nook and whispered a knight's promise to remember forgotten children. But not all corners accepted the broken wheel. In Dorne, Princess Arianne Martell convened her council beneath rising temperatures of resentment. Her people had bled under dragons too. Rhaegar's conquest and Viserys' marriage claims lingered like old scars. She threatened embargo against the Reach unless her ports received equal share of Myrish wines. Lady Tala countered with tariffs on Dornish saffron. Trade skirmishes flared. Yet even there, compromise rose. In Sunspear's shadowed water gardens, Arianne walked with a new maester from the Citadel, Maester Ilaria, once paramour to a baron, who showed her grafted fruit trees capable of thriving in salt-blown soil. Innovation laid mortar where grudges cracked. And at the center of the Riverlands, near Old Harrenhal where charred walls echoed still with dragonfire legend, 2 monks from the sect of the Red Shepherd discovered hot springs, bubbling with rare minerals. They began drafting blueprints for communal bathhouses, open to every realm's pilgrims, an experiment in shared prosperity. Raven messages flew. Queen Sansa offered builders. Yara promised crews to carve channels. Even Arianne sent stonemasons. Harrenhal, once a scar, might become sanctuary. Some laughed. Stone cursed by death cannot host peace, but seeds sprout in ashes given time. In the far north, winter's first blizzard arrived heavy and sudden. Snow hammered tents till guy ropes snapped. Jon and Arya worked shoulder to shoulder, shoring lean toes with fresh-cut poles, heaping furs over trembling families. Tyrion oversaw ration counts, cursing frost-stiff fingers. Ghost herded straying goats into makeshift pens. Through the white roar, they persevered, and when storm clouds drifted east, the settlement still stood, battered but unbroken. That night, huddled within Jon's timber and hide lodge, Arya warmed her hands over a brazier. Tyrion poured thimblefuls of warmed blackberry wine into tin cups. They toasted surviving a storm likely mild by local legend, Tyrion's words, and drifted into uneasy sleep. Arya woke near dawn to Ghost's low growl. She slipped outside, snow crunching under soft boots. Moonlight glinted off eerie silhouettes, figures at the tree line. 5, maybe 6. Their cloaks blended with night, but movement betrayed human, not beast. She crouched, tapped 2 fingers to the ringed horn hung by Jon's door. her old signal from Winterfell hunts. Jon emerged a breath later, long claw in hand, Tyrion clutching a hatchet no bigger than his forearm. Wind hissed, but the shapes didn't move closer. Jon called, "Who walks?" No answer. He took 2 steps forward, boots sinking mid-calf. A torch flared among the figures, illuminating a pale standard. 3 twisting shapes like ice serpents. Arya stiffened. She had seen that sigil once in Bravos, stitched on the cloak of a merchant dealing curious salts. House Corrin of the Shivering Lands, rumored descendants of lost Skagosi blood mixed with old Valyrian. An obscure house from islands northeast of Bear Isle, seldom glimpsed this side of the Bay of Seals. A voice answered, deep, resonant, female. "We seek the Wolf King." Jon raised his torch. "No king here." "You broke the Dragon Queen," the voice replied. "The sea knows. We ask sanctuary." They stepped into light. 4 women and 2 men, faces chapped raw, eyes shining like ice chips. Each carried bundles strapped to backs. Furs, carved bone totems, nets. One woman knelt, pressing a small chest forward. "Gift," she said. Jon opened it. Seeds. Glossy black, crimson, mottled gold. "Dragon pepper," Tyrion whispered. "Rare. Grows only in fissures warmed by old magic." "We bring trade," the kneeling woman said. "And stories." Arya caught the note of fear behind her hope. She studied their shoulders, exhausted slumps, and her heart flinched. She turned to Jon. "The forest's big. Fires burn warmer when company shares." He nodded slowly, drawing the sigils of the old gods in his mind. "Welcome," he told them. He ate, sleep. "Tomorrow we talk of seed and soil." The newcomers joined. Fires grew. Children crept from shelters, eyes wide to see foreigners, speaking a tongue twisted with Skagos clicks. Laughter sprouted in spurts, uncertain but contagious. Later Arya asked Jon, "How many can these lands support?" "More than live now," he said. "Less than will arrive if word spreads." He stared into the flames, snowflakes dying on his hair. "We may build something new or break under weight of hope." "We've faced worse odds," she countered. He smiled faintly. "Wuh." That singular syllable thrummed in the air like plucked heartstring. In Winterfell's great hall, Sansa read the latest Raven scrolls by lamplight. Reports of banditry along the Broken Branch Trail worried her, but Lady Brienne's patrols had captured the ringleaders, disgruntled former Goldcloaks who felt the realm owed them pay. She drafted orders to rehabilitate them via labor rebuilding causeways. "Mercy that breeds loyalty," she mused. Bran entered unannounced, wheeled silently beside the carved weirwood throne. "The last magpies left the eyrie," he informed her, voice flat yet distant as snowfall. "Winter winds drive them south sooner this year." Sansa set her quill down. "Your eyes remain everywhere." "Where needed," he said. His gaze flicked to her parchment. "You will need new bannermen come spring. The Manderleys spread thin." "We'll manage." She smelled wax, resin, felt the castle's ancient stones hum around them. "Our coffers hold through 2 hard winters." Bran's head tilted, as though hearing music far away. Arya journeys north of north. Sansa's breath caught. "Is she safe?" "For now." Ghost runs beside. A faint echo of a smile curved his lips. He tapped an ivory chess prince carved into his chair arm. "The game grows quieter. Fewer pieces, slower moves. Sometimes I wonder if the board matters now." "It matters," Sansa said. "People live atop that board. They need stable ground, fair harvest, rule of law." She rose, wrapped her cloak tighter. "And stories. They cling to stories when hearthfires burn low." Bran's eyes met hers, ancient and childlike all at once. "Then tell them true." At the edge of the far forest, Arya crouched beside the Corrin travelers around a big iron pot, bubbling with seal fat stew. The leader, Meltha Corrin, spoke of small skerries where ice claws the coast year-round, yet beneath basalt cliffs crystal caverns glow with violet fire at low tide. She claimed the roots of strange white-blossomed shrubs weave through those caves, and lanternfish eggs cling to the roots, their oil potent against frostbite. As she spoke, Arya realized the woman's dialect held faint echoes of old tongue, syllables Bran once muttered during trance. Threads of languages tangled across continents, now woven together in this clearing. When Meltha asked what stories the wolves carried, Arya told the tale of the girl who killed a night king. No one saw coming. She left out shadows of faceless deaths, but spoke of heartbeats, of courage that climbs a ridge of dead to strike a blow that shatters winter's spine. Children listened, eyes reflecting flame. Meltha listened too, silent but bright. Later, as smoke curled upward, Arya pulled Jon aside. The free folk were once sworn enemies. Now they build with us. Trade flickers between south and north. Stories feed hearts. You asked what fills life once lists run out. Perhaps this. She gestured. Tents, laughter, a man weaving reeds into snowshoes. Building so others may carve new lists of seeds to plant, names to bless, constellations to claim. Jon considered her words while snow settled on his lashes. A slow exhale left his chest, plume wisping into night. Atonement never ends, he said. Nor does dawn. She countered. Both just keep coming. Winter's teeth sank deeper. Supply caches dwindled faster, with mouths multiplied by Corrins and other wanderers. 3 rangers from Last Hearth, a pair of ironmen seeking new reavings on land. Tyrion devised ration lotteries. Jon oversaw hunting parties. Yet elk moved further south. Streams iced too thick. One grim dusk, a forager found in a gorge the tracks of something massive. Wide paw prints, claws longer than a man's finger. Some claimed remnant dirrabears. Others insisted ice lions from Skago's myths. Arya volunteered to track it, mindful that beast meat could feed many. She set off with Ghost and a Corrin scout named Ori, leaving at dusk to follow the fresh marks across wind-swept flats. They followed the spoor 2 days through white silence. At last, ghostly roars echoed across a bowl valley. They climbed a ridge and beheld the beast. A shaggy ursine giant, pelt white-blue, eyes sickly yellow, starved and enraged. It tore at a reindeer carcass. Ori readied a bone harpoon. Arya readied her stiletto, though doubt fluttered at its puny reach. Ghost bristled. Arya shifted. Every predator movement mirrored in her mind. She remembered Syrio Forel's first lesson. Fear cuts deeper than swords. She inhaled crisp air, felt ribs expand, felt the world shrink to a single pulse. As the bear rose on hind legs, bellowing, she loosed a whistle, the Brevosi gull cry she once used to distract city sentries. Ghost darted right, snapping at the bear's flank. Ori flung his harpoon. It stabbed the creature's thigh. Arya sprinted left, zigzagging to confuse. The bear swiped Ghost, missing by a wolf's breath. Its claws struck stone, sparks flew. Arya slid beneath its other paw, slicing the tendon behind its foreleg. The beast crashed to 3 legs, raging. Ori severed a jugular with a hooked blade. Blood steamed in snow. The kill ended as swiftly as it began, but Arya's heart pounded minutes after. They skinned the massive carcass, quartered meat, packed it onto a travois fashioned from fallen branches. On the dawn of the 3rd day they trudged back, bearing bounty and tail. The camp cheered their return, meat for weeks. Tyrion called for a feast, stew thick with bear fat, barley from dwindling stores, pine nettle brew. Children sang songs of Ghost the giant slayer, though the wolf merely curled near Arya, muzzle flecked with grease. That night, as the fire crackled and sparks ascended like restless spirits, Ori produced a bone flute and played a haunting melody. Arya recognized fragments, the refrain of Bravosi sailors. She joined on a wooden whistle, shaped by a boy from the Thens. Their duet twined as snowflakes swirled in spiral dance about the blaze. Jon tapped a simple rhythm on his drinking horn. Tyrion, half drunk, tried to sing but slurred into laughter. It wasn't civilization yet. It was something older, rawer, and perhaps stronger for its imperfection. South of the wall, rumblings stirred. A band of renegade Blackfire pretenders, long exiled in Tyrosh, sailed to Crackclaw Point claiming descent from Meleys the monstrous. They rallied disaffected sellswards under the banner of a winged skull wreathed in flame. Lady Tala Tarley dispatched bowmen. Lord Gendry rallied coastal levies. Sansa sent a contingent of 20 mountain clansmen under Torgon Flint, loyal as stone and twice as stubborn. The would-be conquerors landed, expecting scattered defense. They encountered a unified front across realm lines. 2 sharp skirmishes ended their bid, and their leader's head found a spike on Maidenpool's gate. Yet the incident reminded lords how quickly power vacuums breed opportunists. The Dragon Pit Accords faced first test, and passed, but barely. Guards along the broken capital watched for fresh threats. One twilight, Brienne arrived with Podrick and 50 Knights of Winter. She walked the bones of the Red Keep, scaffolds where masons patched fire-torn masonry. She held silent vigil in the courtyard where Tyrion once found his brother's golden hand. She swore the new realm would never again bow to single sword. Pod noted how her gauntleted fist clenched at mention of dragon eggs rumored lost in Dragonstone's collapsed crypts. Some temptations, they both knew, should stay buried. In the settlement beyond the wall, spring finally crept into the bones of snowdrifts. Streams burbled under fragile ice. Spruce tips flushed green. Jon organized planting of the Corran seeds in cleared glades warmed by fire pits. The black dragon pepper sprouted crimson shoots. Golden seeds birthed stalks that exuded spicy sap, said to cure fever. Tyrion wrote the first pages of his new book, We Who Dwell Between Breath and Silence. Arya spent hours ranging with ghost tracking herds, mapping ravines, sharing map sketches with Bran via Raven. One late afternoon, she climbed a ridge alone and spotted smoke curling from a valley miles west, where no settlers roamed. Curious, she descended. There, tucked between cliffs, she found stone ruins older than any first men hold fast. Cyclopean blocks etched with spiral sigils. In the central courtyard lay a cracked obsidian monolith, half buried by moss. As she circled it, a low hum thrummed through her boots like faint thunder. Raising needle, she tapped the stone. The hum spiked, then faded. Something slept beneath. She marked the site, returned by moonlight to camp, and told Jon and Tyrion. They resolved to dispatch a small expedition to study. Knowledge must precede fear. But they kept it secret from the settlement until they understood its nature. Days ripened. The Corran pepper plants formed tiny buds of fiery orange. The children called them dragon's tears. Jon held an assembly where elders from all clans debated laws. Disputes to be settled by council of 6 elected spokes, punishments limited to labor, not maiming. Through tense hours they hammered code. When the sun set, agreement stood. The New North, they dubbed it, neither kingdom nor tribe, but a quilt sewn from choice. Arya watched shadows flop against tents as torches burned. Silhouettes of free folk, Corrans, Thens, even 2 deserters from the Watch who earned amnesty by felling timber. She felt a tug inside she hadn't known since childhood. Rooting. Perhaps this forest might hold her long enough to sprout something besides vengeance. But restlessness remained her oldest friend. She told Jon she would scout west again, beyond the Monolith Valley, following old whispered tales of a river of lights, seen only at solstice. He frowned but did not forbid. Each step made the world larger. Before she left, he clasped her shoulder. Our father's words never fade, he said. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. She squeezed his wrist. I haven't forgotten. The pack just covers more miles now. Tyrion presented her a small gift. A compass had fashioned from lodestone and carved bone. Points true, unless you stand at the world's ends, he joked. If it spins wild, write that in your book. She thanked him, packed her bedroll. Ghost watched with keen eyes, then trotted off to fetch a share of dried bear meat, as if insisting on accompaniment. Jon nodded consent. Wolves choose their paths. So, at dawn, Arya and Ghost headed west, sun painting silver veins in snow crust. She carried needle, the stiletto, and the compass. She carried also a parchment with Bran's careful charcoal tracing of ancient sigils, the same spirals carved on that valley stone. He had scrawled one note, listen for the world's heartbeat. They traveled a week, crossing glaciers and windraked scree. On the seventh night, they camped beside a frozen tarn whose surface reflected stars, so vividly she felt suspended between heaven and mirror. Ghost dozed, tail curled. Arya lay wrapped in pelts, studying constellations Bran once named. There, Ice Dragon's spine. There, Shadowcat. There, Needle's path. She mapped them onto memory like stepping stones across eternity. When she drifted to sleep, dreams came. She was 5, hiding in Winterfell crypts, while Jon played at being King of Gloom. She was 11, watching her father's head fall. She was 15, striding through darkness wearing a dead girl's face. But in each dream, Bran's ravens perched, whispering one phrase again and again. The world's heartbeat, lives and stories, told by those who dare listen. She woke before dawn, heart thrumming like wings. West of Winterfell, 2 moons later, a lone rider approached the gates. Dust-streaked Cersei Umber, last of her line. She sought audience with Queen Sansa. She told of lichen plague creeping across last hearth's goat herds. Sansa dispatched healers, grain stores, and a letter for Jon suggesting the pepper sap might save beasts too. Cersei, overawed by such swift mercy, bent knee anew. Alliances grew less about oaths to crowns and more about webs of aid. Across the sea, in Pentos, ex-slave scribes recited copies of Tyrion's first scroll dispatches from the New North. Word of fertile new frontiers stirred curiosity in ports. Merchants weighed risk, but the memory of winter whites lingered. None dared yet sail, though rumors brewed of an eccentric captain planning a voyage round the world to approach the continent's far side. Lenicio's name resurfaced. One of his ravens reached Arya months into her exploration. She camped on a treeless plateau, horizon slit by shimmering aurora even under daylight. She cracked the wax. I plot a westbound course midsummer. If your feet tire of ice, meet me at the lonely light. Bring your wolf. We'll see what lies beyond breath. J.L. She reread it thrice, waited in flame light. She pictured the settlement thriving without her, pictured Jon's easy half-smile as he hoisted a pepper gourd, pictured Sansa's parchment-lined fingers warming over a candle. Then she looked at Ghost, and the wolf looked back, eyes pale, ancient, eager. Maps still held blank edges. She packed camp, tracked southwest, through valleys alive with newborn rivers, along cliffs where seals moaned. She discovered petroglyphs older than first men cut into basalt, wolves chasing suns, dragons bowing before stars. She sketched them in her journal with charcoal, imagining Tyrion's excitement. She found featherstone deposits that sang tiny chimes when struck, proof of legends about ice spirits forging frost glass armor. She wrote to Bran, "Found your heartbeat in stone songs." He replied by raven months later, "And so the heart speaks." By early summer, she reached the coast north of Bear Isle, where cliffs plunging into frothing sea hosted gull nests enough to whiten the sky. There, anchored in a hidden cove, lay the Felicity, a 3-masted refit of the saffron gull, sails embroidered with a compass rose. Lenicio greeted her at the plank, gold tooth gleaming. The god of tides waited, it seems. Or knew better than to sail without a Stark, she replied, stepping aboard with Ghost at heel. The crew bustled, deckhands of mixed blood, Bravosi, summer islanders, even a pale Yeti woman with tattoos of leaping sea serpents. They loaded barrels of salt pork, bundles of pepper seedlings Jon had gifted, casks of Bear Island honey mead courtesy of Lyanna Mormont, who had scrawled on the lid, "For Roar Nights." Arya smiled. Roar they would. Before departure, she wrote 2 letters. One to Jon, another to Sansa. To Jon she wrote, "North's heartbeat echoes still. Make sure it never falters." To Sansa, "Stories travel faster than ravens. Keep the pages turning." She sealed each with a wolf's head pressed Tyrion carved, entrusted them to a fast corvid trained by the Corrans. Then she stowed her journal and needle in her cabin chest, trusting the sea's hush to lull them. At dawn they sailed, the Felicity breasting swells silvered by sun. Ghost stood at prow, fur rippling, gaze fixed on horizon where the world curved into wonder. Arya joined him, palms gripping rail. Winds tasted of brine and fern. Gulls wheeled. Behind them, the cliffs dwindled to gray smudge. She closed her eyes, felt deck pitch beneath. West beckoned again. But this time she carried with her stories that could soothe hungers deeper than revenge. She carried memory of found families, of seeds sprouting in frost, of children's laughter threading pine boughs, of wolves and men weaving new laws from old scars. She carried blank pages for whatever came next. The sky stretched infinite. Sails billowed. The Felicity glided into blue unknown, compass needle trembling toward promise. Arya opened her eyes and smiled, not at what she left behind, but at what might yet be born in the vast hush between waves and stars. And somewhere far behind, in a settlement lit by dragon pepper torches, Jon Snow looked north beyond the edge of dawn and whispered a silent blessing to the sister, whose footsteps wrote fresh constellations on the skin of the world. The Felicity sliced across swells the color of tarnished silver, decks trembling beneath the hum of a wind no sailor aboard had felt before, fragrant with resinous undertones, almost sweet as though blown from forests no chart yet named. Arya braced at the rail with Ghost beside her, white fur rippling like snowmelt over stone. Behind them, the prow rose and fell in the cadence of a slumbering giant, timbers groaning as if stretching cramped muscles after a century's rest. Crew moved about with quiet urgency, hauling lines, greasing pulleys, adjusting the crimson-striped mainsail that bore Lenicia's 8-pointed compass rose. Every man and woman aboard sensed they had slipped from the known into the hush that skirts the world's forgotten rim. The Rhoynish navigator, Talus the Candle-Eye, so named for the mote of pale glow that pulsed in one iris after a childhood lightning strike, stood near the helm reading sextant angles against a sky littered with alien constellation. Where once the ice dragon sprawled, a broken chain of tiny stars now arced like thrown embers. Needle's path had faded, replaced by a wheeling spiral too diffuse to anchor bearings. At times Talus muttered under her breath in Old Rhoynar, jotting frantic symbols onto a vellum scroll coated with wax to resist spray. She confessed to Arya one dusk that the heavens above this sea shifted hourly, as though some vast invisible hand spun the firmament like a gambler's wheel. Yet the crew's unease sizzled into wonder each night when ribbons of ghost light shimmered across the vault, golds and violets seldom seen even at the wall. They called them dragon vines, insisting the color whorls traced ancient migratory paths of Valyrian worms. Arya merely watched, arms folded against the chill, feeling the universe tilt wider with every pulse of radiance. On the 12th day past the lonely light, storm clouds climbed the horizon, rust-dark cliff faces stacked upon one another. The barometer orb above the door to the chart room dropped 2 full lines by afternoon. Captain Lenicio ordered storm canvas rigged in double lashings on casks. Sailors stowed anything not nailed down. Ghost hackles rose when the first pressure wave punched across the deck, rattling every copper nail. Within an hour, the Felicity battled swells tall as hold-fast walls, bow knifing through foam so cold it burned. Arya helped reef the foresail, rope biting her palms through gloves. Rain hammered sideways. Lightning spider webbed the gloom. Between flashes she glimpsed Ghost leaping wave crests with almost gleeful defiance, white blur against charcoal tumult. Twice she shouted for him. Twice he returned with low yips, then vanished forward again. A rogue breaker smashed the rail where she had been standing seconds earlier, shearing oak like cheese. She sprawled hard, breath knocked out, and slid toward hungry green water until strong arms hauled her upright. Lesaro, the Yeti tattoo woman, teeth bared in a grin equal parts scorn and camaraderie. "Strap or swim!" she yelled over wind, pointing at the nearest belaying pin. Arya nodded, looped a safety line, and pressed on. For 2 days, water and sky were one. Crew slept in shifts that seemed mere blinks between shanties of bailing. Talus lashed herself to the binnacle, whispering calculations none could hear. At the storm's height, the Felicity climbed a monstrous wall of water so steep the deck became nearly vertical. Arya clung to a ratline, muscles screaming, and wondered if this was how Nymeria's ancestors felt when Andalos drowned behind them, suspended atop choice, forward into myth or backward into oblivion. The prow teetered, then sliced down the far face into a trough, luminous with pale kelp that lit the black water from beneath like witch glass. A collective gasp hushed even the gale. The sea glowed emerald here, every wave crest tipped with a shimmer of quicksilver. Lightning flickered, and the water answered, a mirror storm beneath the hull. Then, as suddenly as it came, the tempest collapsed. Clouds shredded into aching cobalt sky, rain tapered to mist, and wine stilled until the mainsail sagged like a weary lung. In the quiet that followed, timbers popped, lines stripped, and the crew regarded one another with brittle, disbelieving smiles, battered yet unbroken. Lanicio descended from the quarterdeck, beard streaming, and ordered a double tot of Brevosi black rum for every soul. While sailors mended torn canvas and spliced ropes, Arya ventured to the prow where Ghost awaited, flanks flecked with salt crystals. She scratched behind his ears, murmuring praises. Ahead, a band of violet haze clung to the water like dawn trapped at dusk. No land showed, yet seabirds wheeled out of that spectral curtain, sleek, candle-pale creatures with elongated wings and cry like cracking ice. One swooped past, scanning the deck with uncanny golden eyes before veering starboard. Arya's pulse quickened. Birds this far. Land could not be far behind. Within 3 hours the lookout's voice knifed down. Coast, dead ahead, north by northwest. Lanicio clambered to the foredeck spyglass in hand. Arya followed, heart pounding. Through the lens bloomed jagged silhouettes unlike any shoreline she had known. Tall basalt pillars thrust straight from the sea, their tops sheared flat into natural ramparts festooned with spindly, wind-twisted trees bearing crystalline leaves. Between pillars crept low banks of fog shot through, with the same internal gleam she'd seen in the storm's trough. The captain ordered half sail, and the Felicity glided closer. Water here ran clear to impossible depth, revealing a forest of glassy coral fronds swaying below like submerged wheat. Small silvery fish darted, each flick of their fins leaving contrails of phosphorescence. When an anchor was dropped into a sandy shelf between reefs, it rang on the seafloor with a musical chime. They lowered a dinghy. Arya, Lanicio, Tallis, and Lazaro volunteered for the first landing party, along with Derek and Pole, broad-shouldered deckhands who carried axes and crossbows. Ghost leapt down unbidden, landing in the dinghy with a splash and shake. His presence eased the sailors. No omen was kinder than a direwolf leading scouts. They rode through a narrow channel bordered by walls of basalt so smooth they shone like mirrors, fractured by hexagonal fissures. Water sounded strange here. Each oar stroke rang like a bell inside a cathedral. When the channel opened into a lagoon, Arya sucked a breath. The water was lilac, milky with suspended iridescence. Floating atop were petal-shaped ice shards that did not melt despite the mild air. Lazaro reached to touch one. It dissolved into motes of light on her fingertip, fragrant with something halfway between citrus and smoke. They beached the dinghy on a shore of glittering sand. No, not sand, but ground crystal grains that crunched under boots like broken glass without cutting. Sunlight refracted through the beach, casting rainbow tracers across the traveler's boots. Ghost raised his muzzle, sniffed, then paced inland. They followed up a gradual incline toward vegetation. Trees of pallid bark with translucent leaves that clattered softly though wind was absent. Each leaf trapped sunlight glowing faintly. Tallis whispered, "A world behind the mirrors." Her candle eye flickered. Lanicio, ever pragmatic, produced a small chisel and knocked a sliver from a basalt column. It rang like distant thunder. He tucked it into a pouch. "Proof," he muttered. They reached a plateau where shallow pools dotted the crystal plain, water so still reflections seemed more vivid than reality. In one pool wriggled luminous larvae shaped like spirals, each only a thumb length. Lazaro crouched to examine. The creatures sang, an actual resonance, a single sustained note that vibrated the air. Pole shivered. Sorcery. Arya knelt, studying the note's pulse ripple through the water. It reminded her of the hum at the Monolith Valley. She dipped a fingertip, water warm, silken. The larvae ceased singing, darting deeper until they vanished. Stillness returned, but for the gentle chime of leaves. They pressed further. Beyond the plateau rose a set of standing stones formed into a perfect ring, each pillar etched with spirals in bas relief. The pattern matched Bran's charcoal rubbings. Arya's breath snagged. She approached, heart tilting, and placed her palm on one glyph. The stone thrummed softly, then warmth flooded her wrist, fleeting, like a child's hand squeezing once before letting go. When she stepped back, the ring pulsed faint silver along its circumference. Talus gasped. Derek raised his crossbow. Lazaro gently pushed it down. "Stones errant prey," she muttered. There was no sign of habitation, no hearths, no tools, no bones. Yet the place felt watched. Arya sensed it the way she felt a sparring partner's gaze before a strike, presence perched on the cusp of action. She scanned the cliffs. Nothing but leaning trees. Still. She whispered thanks in old First Men words and withdrew. As they turned, Ghost barked, a short warning yap, and bounded toward the cliff's lip where basalt dropped sheer 20 fathoms to the sea. When Arya arrived, she saw what spooked him. Below, near the Felicity, shadowy forms glided beneath the lavender surface. Dark fins slicing the water. Not sharks. Fins too slender, bodies elongated. One broke the surface in a lazy roll, revealing scaled hide that shimmered with opalescence and eyes set too forward. Almost intelligent. It exhaled a column of vapor before submerging. Even at this distance, its tail dwarfed the dinghy. Talus whistled low. "Serpents of marrow sea tails," she murmured, said to guard gateways to the world's womb. Lanicio signaled time to return, but Arya lingered, scanning horizon. West of their lagoon pillars jutted higher, culminating in a jag-toothed spine arching like a frozen leviathan across the sky. Where it met sea, clouds hovered low, tinted fuchsia. She resolved to explore there later. They rowed back under hush. Aboard, the crew pressed them with questions. Lanicio offered measured wonder, forbidding any shore parties until he deemed it safe. Paul bragged of singing pools, laughed his nerves away. Talus sketched frantically. Lazaro sharpened her long knife, eyes darting. That night Arya returned alone to the foredeck. Sky blazed with twin crescent moons, one familiar ivory, the other smaller, plum dark, never witnessed in Westeros skies. She felt an odd vertigo. Perhaps they had crossed into a domain brushed by the world's shadow. She reached into her satchel, pulled Bran's glyph rubbings, compared to her memory of the ring. Identical save each spiral here contained a tiny off-center star. The star was new. She wondered if Bran knew, if his ravens pierced this far. She considered lighting a pyre for visions but refrained, some secrets better gathered first. At dawn, Lanicio ordered sounding lines. Depth plummeted abruptly beyond the reef to abyssal darkness. He anchored closer to cliffs and prepared a second expedition, this time with samples jars, picks, and a cask of fresh water to trade should they meet sentient dwellers. Arya insisted on joining. The captain did not protest. They scaled basalt pillars via natural steps carved by wind, reaching a shelf where luminous moss grew. The moss compressed into soft mats, odorless but faintly minty. Lazaro pocketed swatches. Further on, they found a series of shallow caves whose interiors glinted with crystalline columns. In one chamber stood a basin carved from single jade-green stone, filled with liquid, reflecting not the explorers, but swirling mist shapes that looked like rivers seen from mountains. When Paul dipped a fingertip, images shattered, water rippling outward with a hiss like steam. Derek pointed to the back wall. There, scorched into stone, a pictograph. A wolf, a dragon, a weirwood leaf, and a spiral sun around a single vertical sword. Arya's throat tightened. It felt less like prophecy, and more like memory etched by hands beyond time, waiting for something to happen. Behind them, Ghost growled. They wheeled. At the cave mouth stood a figure no one had heard approach. Tall, slight, clothed in fitted hide, stitched with silver fiber. Skin pale as birch bark, hair silver white, braided into 3 cords, eyes a luminous gray with pupils slit like a cat. The stranger's expression unreadable, curiosity tempered by caution. In slender hands, they cradled a staff topped with what looked like a shard of the crystal leaves outside. No one spoke. Arya instinctively shifted a step forward, empty palms visible. The stranger's eyes tracked her. She inclined her head and murmured greeting in Low Valyrian, then again in Braavosi, then in the shattered dialect of free folk. No flicker of recognition. Finally, Talis tried Old Rhoynar. Lazaro attempted a Yidi greeting. Nothing. Arya recalled Bran's scribbles on the spiral glyph. Heartbeat of the world. She pressed her fist lightly to her chest, then spread fingers outward, the gesture northern hearth wives used to say, "My heart's warmth to you." The stranger watched, then mirrored the gesture, touching their own sternum before letting hand drift outward, palm up. Their lips parted. A single melodious note emerged, harmonious with the drone of the cave air. It resonated off crystal, awakening faint glows along each pillar. The note held neither threat nor supplication, only invitation. Arya's spine tingled. She answered with the first bar of a Winterfell harvest song, low and even. The stranger's eyes brightened. They added a second voice, layered above. Soon cave crystals chimed, each facet vibrating sympathetic tones until the entire grotto sang. When the song fell away, the stranger stepped aside, motioning deeper into tunnels. Lanichio muttered risk, but Arya moved ahead, ghost padding silent. The party followed. Passageways spiraled down, lit by crystals that responded to each footfall, blooming light ahead and fading behind. Eventually the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. They halted in wordless awe. The chamber's roof soared unseen into darkness, studded with points of light like a second night sky. At its center rose a pedestal of intertwined roots, turned to stone, supporting a translucent orb larger than a wagon wheel. Within the orb swirled images, continents shifting, dragon shadows crossing seas, weirwood branches sprouting scarlet leaves, a woman with silver hair cradling a newborn in fire that did not burn. Around the pedestal stood 6 more of the silver-braided folk, unarmed, eyes reflecting the orb's vision. The first stranger motioned Arya forward. She approached, palm tingling, aware of her companion's breaths behind her. The orb brightened as she neared, seen speeding, a direwolf running beside a queen on a shattered throne, a broken wheel dissolving into starlight, a ship sailing beyond the world as roots emerged beneath its hull. A voice, not heard with ears but felt inside marrow, spoke, "You walk with threads of many stories, needle of paths. Why do you breach the quiet sea?" The voice was neither male nor female, ancient and newborn. Arya swallowed, thinking but not speaking, unsure if thought sufficed. She formed silent words, to see what lies beyond boundaries. To learn. To ensure the pack survives. The orb shimmered. Survival is not end, but beginning. Will you bear seed of stories back, that roots may take? Images shifted. Pepper plants blooming in frost, children carving new runes, Sansa reading a tome bound in crystal bark. Arya's pulse hammered. She thought, yes. The light dimmed. The strangers, caretakers, she decided, bowed. One extended a hand, long fingers curled around a sprig cut from the crystalline leaves. Arya accepted. The sprig felt warm, alive. Its facets refracted her heartbeat into rainbow motes that danced along her gloves. Lanichio exhaled a shaky chuckle. Lazaro muttered a prayer. Talis scribbled madly. The caretaker touched its own chest, then Arya's sprig, then drew a circle mid-air. Understanding dawned. Plant this, carry the circle outward. They retraced steps in reverent hush. At the cave mouth, Arya turned. The caretakers had vanished soundlessly. Only a faint chime lingered. Back on the Felicity, night fell swift. Arya sat beneath lantern glow, sprig nested in a clay pot of moss. She narrated to Lanichio, while Talis transcribed. Captain announced at dawn they would skirt the remaining pillar isles, chart currents, then return northeast to share findings. No holdfast believed them else. Yet Arya sensed the voyage itself already stitched into the weave of realms, Ripple would travel ahead. Days blurred into diligent routine, mapping coasts of crystal sand, recording star shifts, cataloging creatures, sea serpents that sang at sunset, birds whose wings flickered translucent like living stained glass, crabs that sculpted spirals in beaches overnight. Arya practiced the heart song taught by the caretaker. Whenever she hummed near the sprig, its facets glowed faintly, leaves unfurling slower but sure. Weeks later, sails billowed with eastward winds that smelled like remembered home. The Felicity's hold brimmed with specimens sealed in brine jars, sketches, basalt shards. Even one small crystal leaf carefully contained in water to prevent desiccation. Lanicio charted a course to skirt Tarth, then hug Reach waters, expecting to reach Old Town within a moon. On calm evenings, Arya stood aft with Ghost and watched their mysterious coastline recede into haze. She felt both loss and promise. She fingered Bran's parchment. He had to see these glyph variations, had to hear the cavern song. She imagined Jon tasting stew flavored with crystal leaf infusion. Would it warm colder than northern night or chill hotter than bellyfire? She chuckled at paradox. Knowledge rarely tasted mild. One dawn, fog thick as cream-blanketed sea. Bells tolled half-hearted to warn unseen craft. Arya paced decks, unease gnawed, though not fear. It felt like waiting for something recognized. Mid-morning fog parted, revealing a silhouette dead ahead. A vessel broad-beamed, black-hulled, flying no banner. Its sails hung slack, yet it drifted steadily across the Felicity's bow. Lanicio cursed and hailed, but the ship answered only with creaking wood. They adjusted course to pass astern. As distance closed, shapes aboard came into view, crew frozen mid-task, hands on rigging, eyes open yet lifeless, faces pale as candle wax. Talus whispered of legends, ships of the stillness, doomed crews sailing until memories fade to salt. Lanicio insisted on salvage. Lazzaro insisted on burning lest plague spread. Arya said nothing, but Ghost growled low. They boarded in silence, masks of boiled leather doused with strong vine spirit across noses. The air stank of stagnant water and something faintly metallic. Bodies bore no wounds. Cargo hold contained sealed crates of ordinary goods. Wheat, dried figs, turned to dust, bolts of cloth. In the captain's cabin, a log lay open. Last entry dated 2 decades prior by Westeros reckoning, positioned less than a month before the War of the Five Kings. How had the vessel arrived so far west and south? Why had rot claimed neither hull nor flesh? The log recorded strange humming nights and water glowing like moonfire, ending with the words, "The song is inside our bones now." Lanicio commanded immediate retreat. The sailcloth and papers they burned on the ghost deck, ashes swirling into fog like displaced souls. Bodies they consigned to deep sea, after weighted shrouds. As the last splash faded, the water around the corpse bubbled, releasing a pale luminescence identical to that seen in larvae pools. Crew crossed themselves. Arya stared long into that light until it dimmed, pondering whether the song that filled the cavern beneath pillars could as easily consume as enlighten. 2 nights later, she dreamed Bran's ravens delivering shards of crystal to every castle yard, each shard sprouting song so sweet lords wept. She woke unsettled. Knowledge, she reminded, is blade and bread alike. It feeds and it cuts. When they raised a familiar constellation-scape, Ice Dragon returned, Needle's path resuming. Cheers rang. The Felicity had vaulted back across some silent border. Weather warmed, gulls known to Westeros wheeled overhead. Ghost sniffed breezes heavy with kelp and cod, ears pricked as if recognizing the taste of home. Approaching Old Town Harbor, they lowered colored signal scarves to announce peaceful intent. Harbor masters rode out, jaws slack at sight of crystal leaf banner flown beneath the compass rose. First questions spilled before lines even thrown. Lanicio regaled them while Tallis prepared sealed chests of evidence for the citadel. Basalt ring shards, sketches, water samples. Arya disembarked with 2 tasks: dispatch ravens northward bearing letters, and secure a fast river sloop bound for White Harbor. She might have sailed straight to Winterfell by sea, but winter currents chilled, and she yearned for hoofbeat rhythm across her homeland's soil. On the docks she found a hawker selling painted shields, harvest crowns, kraken, rain-swept owls. Among them one bore a dawn-golden spiral behind a dire wolf's head. Coincidence, perhaps, or rumor outrunning truth. She purchased it, strapped it to her pack. That evening, in a candlelit inn, she penned Bran a lengthy letter. Drawings of cavern orb, notation of songs, description of caretakers. For Sansa she wrote of pepper sprouts and laws carved from snow, of North forging alliances on trade, and trust better than iron. For Jon she wrote little, only one line. The world's heart beats strong. You helped mend its rhythm. At the end, she pressed a stray translucent leaf petal that had fallen from the sprig, fragile, refracting pink and jade at certain angles. On the river sloop Black Mummer, she traveled north through arbor of late summer trees, their leaves already edged in amber. Sailors spoke of a fragile peace, petty lords squabbling over taxes, but no armies marching, thanks to Sansa's league of envoys who rode ceaseless circuit. They called her the Thread Queen. Darning holes others left. Arya smiled at the title. At White Harbor, she changed for a sturdy bay horse and joined a caravan bound inland. Each night around common fires, she heard new myths. Of free folk shipping pepper pods south. Of ironborn brewing ale using salt-sweet crystals. Of citadel acolytes arguing if a second, smaller moon now orbited far west. Some claimed glimpsing its plum-dark crescent at extreme dusk. Arya kept silent but listened. Near Moat Cailin, she left the caravan, choosing wolf paths through barrowfields. Ghost ranged ahead, startling hares, snuffling under hawthorn data. When Winterfell's towers finally breached the horizon, orange in sunset, tears blurred her vision before she realized. Sentries at the gate recognized her not by face. It had changed, matured, but by the direwolf shape that trotted at her heel and the slender sword across her back. They hailed her name with awe. Inside, courtyard bustled with late harvest preparations. Sansa descended stone steps, cloak of russet fox fur trailing. They met in mid-yard, neither caring for propriety, arms clasped tight, cheek against cheek. The last time they embraced, fear had pressed between. Now, an electric possibility thrummed instead. Arya stayed moon turns, relaying stories nightly by hearth. Crystal leaves, singing pools, the caretaker's silent language of song. Bran listened from his weirwood carved throne, eyes half distant. Yet when she spoke of the orb's shifting visions his gaze sharpened. He asked pointed questions. Did the ring's circumference match the grove at Winterfell? Did the stone have scent? He nodded at each answer, as though confirming what ravens had already whispered. One morning he sought her in the godswood. Red leaves littered cold grass. He said, "The heartbeat grows stronger. Threads converge." His breath steamed. South. Lords retell songs you sowed. Their echoes guide new rootlings. He turned those deep eyes on her. Will you go again? Arya looked at her hands, calloused palms that had once ended queens and now planted stories. She flexed fingers. Yes. East next maybe, beyond Basilisk Isles, see if myths wear different masks. Bran smiled small. Then take another gift. He produced a wooden box carved with spiral sun and direwolf. Inside lay a stone disc no larger than a pinecone slice, embedded with flecks of dragonglass. From the cavern valley, he said. A shard fell when you touched glyph. A raven carried it to me. It hums faint when held to heart. She lifted it, felt a gentle vibration, like a remembered voice of the orb. She sensed possibilities rippling outward. The night before she was to depart southward, Jon's raven arrived, parchment bearing his weather-beaten scroll. The settlement thrives. Pepper plants survived freeze, songs soothe restless nights. We built a schoolhouse. Tyrion insists on calling it the Book Burrow. Children paint stories on walls. Your crystal leaf glows when they sing. Ghost is missed. Come see the next thaw. Arya traced the letters, smiling. She slipped the letter into her journal between sketches of caretakers. She would visit, she swore, but first more horizons beckoned. She would be mapmaker, threadweaver, sword, if need be. No queen's assassin, rather the wolf who roams margins, ensuring margins do not devour the page. At dawn, she saddled a gray mare. Sansa gifted a purse of silver stags minted with direwolf and broken wheel. Bran gave a single raven feather inked with glyphs. He said it always finds true wind. Podrick, visiting with Brienne, pressed a small wooden whistle. For luck. Arya packed sprig, now sprouting twin shoots, still glowing faint. Ghost bounded ahead, eager. She looked back once from the gate. Winterfell's towers shone like copper in morning sun. Sansa stood upon ramparts, cloak snapping, hand raised. Bran sat beneath the weirwood, face tranquil. Their silhouettes anchored her like stones in a sling. Weight enough to grant flight its arc. She nudged the mare into trot, then canter. Rode unspooled, leaf-gilded, dew-pearl dusted. Ahead lay white harbor ships, basilisk mists, deserts where storms sang, and seas where moons fell in love with tides. And she with them all, for a while. As horse hooves drummed steady, she hummed a caretaker's single note. Leaves rustled in answer, breeze picking up until it shaped counter melody. The world's heart beat on, and Arya Stark rode its rhythm, needling paths through story's ever-growing tapestry, stitch by daring stitch, until boundless cloth shone bright enough that no living soul would ever again believe the edge of things lay just beyond their village fields.